Hello, this is the Sabi farmer and enjoy this new video.
Harold Fitch said it once, just once, because in his experience, a man who had to say something twice had already lost the argument and was just making noise. He stood at his fence line on a September morning in 2009 and watched the AgriCorps survey crew mark the ground on the other side and said it clearly to the project manager who had driven out from Des Moines in a clean truck with a company logo on the door. Don't touch the drainage swale along the north section. That swale feeds 300 acres of natural water management. You break it, you'll flood everything east of the creek inside of 2 wet springs. The project manager looked at his survey maps, looked at the swale, looked at Harold, 74 years old, worn jacket, boots that had been through 30 Iowa winters. "Mr. Fitch," he said, "we have agricultural engineers on staff. We appreciate the input." Harold nodded once. He walked back to his farm and didn't say another word about it. Harold had farmed his 200 acres outside Clarion, Iowa, since 1971. Not glamorous land, not the rich, dark loam of the central counties. Wright County ground, productive if you understood it, punishing if you didn't. Harold understood it the way a man understands something he has been reading for 40 years. The drainage patterns, the frost behavior, the specific way water moved across that particular landscape after heavy rain, which fields shed it, which ones held it, and where it went when it had nowhere else to go. The swale along the north section was not on any official drainage map. It had been there longer than any map Harold had ever seen. A shallow depression, maybe 40 yards wide, running northeast to southwest for half a mile along what had once been the edge of an ancient glacial path. It didn't look like much. Most people who drove past it saw a low spot in a field. Harold saw 40 years of water management. Every spring rain that fell on the 300 acres west of his property eventually found that swale. It moved the water northeast, slowly, through natural filtration, into the creek that ran along the east boundary of what was now AgriCorps' 3,000 acres. The system was invisible unless you knew what you were looking at. AgriCorps' engineers had not looked. The development began in March of 2010. AgriCorps was converting the 3,000 acres to industrial corn and soybean production, GPS-guided equipment, precision fertilizer application, drainage tile throughout. The kind of operation that looked impressive in the company's annual report and required the kind of land modification that engineers design in offices in Des Moines. Harold watched from his fence line. The tile drainage system they installed was efficient and modern and ran directly through the natural swale, filling it with drainage tile and grading the surface flat to maximize field uniformity. The swale disappeared in 3 days. Harold went inside and had his supper. The first wet spring came in 2011. April rainfall ran 40% above average across Wright County, the kind of spring that tested every drainage system in the region and revealed which ones had been designed by people who understood the land and which ones had been designed by people who understood engineering. AgriCorps' tile system moved water efficiently to exactly the place the swale had always taken it, the northeast corner where the natural glacial depression ended at the creek. Except now, there was no swale to spread the load across 40 yards and half a mile of natural filtration. Now there was tile, concentrated flow, full volume, arriving at the creek edge all at once instead of slowly over days. The creek bank failed on April 23rd. 240 acres of AgriCorps' eastern fields flooded within 72 hours. Standing water 3 feet deep in the lowest sections. Tile drainage overwhelmed. The GPS-guided equipment, a $340,000 planter among it, sitting in water it had never been designed to sit in. Harold saw the water from his kitchen window. He did not go to the fence line. He made coffee and sat at his table and looked out at the flooded fields next door and felt nothing in particular. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just the specific tiredness of a man who said the thing that needed saying and was not heard. The AgriCorps regional manager drove out in May. Different man from the project manager. Older. He parked on the county road and walked to Harold's fence line. Harold came out to meet him. The manager looked at the water damage, at the failed creek bank, at the absence of the swale that Harold's fence line had bordered for 40 years. "Mr. Fitch," he said, "I read the site assessment report from 2009. There's no mention of a natural drainage feature along your property line." "No," Harold said, "there wouldn't be." "Why not?" "Because nobody asked me." The manager was quiet for a moment. "We have engineers." "I know you do," Harold said. "Your engineer walked this property for 2 days with survey equipment. I've walked it for 40 years with my eyes open. Those aren't the same thing." The manager looked at the flooded fields. 240 acres. One failed planting season. A creek bank that would cost significant money to stabilize and would never fully return to what it had been. What would it have taken, the manager said slowly, to preserve the drainage function? Harold thought about it. Leave a 40-yard corridor along my fence line ungraded. Talk and run everywhere else. That corridor does what it's always done. Costs you maybe 8 acres of production. He paused. Saves you everything else. 8 acres against 240. The manager wrote something in his notebook. "Can we restore it?" Harold looked at the landscape, at the graded earth where the swale had been, at 40 years of natural water management that had taken a geological age to develop and 3 days to eliminate. "Partially," Harold said. "Not fully. You can recreate the drainage path. You can't recreate what was in it." He looked at the manager directly. "That's usually how it works when you remove something before you understand what it does." AgriCorps spent the following 2 years regrading the corridor along Harold's fence line. They brought in a hydrologist who spent a week on site, longer than the original engineers had spent, and designed a restoration plan based in part on the drainage behavior Harold described from memory. 40 years of observation that existed nowhere in any document. The restoration worked. Partially, as Harold had said, the flooded fields recovered. The planting schedule normalized. The creek bank stabilized. In 2013, the regional manager drove out again. He brought a younger man, a new site engineer, early 30s, clipboard and clean boots. "Harold," the manager said, "I want you to walk the property line with Marcus. Tell him what you see." Harold looked at the young engineer. The young engineer looked at Harold. "I understand you know this land," Marcus said carefully. "I do," Harold said. "I like to learn what you know." Harold looked at that for a moment, at the honest way it had been said, at the clipboard held not like authority, but like a notebook. He picked up his own jacket from a porch rail. "Then come with me," he said, "and don't write faster than you can understand." They walked the fence line together for 3 hours. Harold talked. Marcus wrote slowly. It was the conversation the project manager should have had in September of 2009 before anyone touched a single acre. It had cost 240 flooded acres and 2 lost seasons to get there. Some lessons arrive exactly when they should. Most of them arrive late.